In 1994, the gaming world was given a great gift, as the popularity of Shaquille O'Neal had crossed various entertainment mediums, including movies, music, and obviously video games, as Shaq became the face of a 2D fighting game simply known as Shaq Fu. As expected from any 2D fighter during that era when Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat 2 ruled the roost, Shaq Fu attempted to be like the competition and outstandingly failed. As someone who not only played any fighting game available on various consoles during the 16-bit era of gaming, Shaq Fu entered my home for a weekend rental and stayed in my Sega Genesis until it was time for my dad to take it back to the store. Shaq Fu proved to be a terrible game. Rather than be angry about the legacy Shaq Fu left on the gaming community, the developers of a release nearly 25 years later embraced the failure that was the original game and decided to switch things up by letting Shaq handle all the fighting in an old-school style side-scrolling brawler full of sophomoric humor and hordes of enemies. Would Shaq Fu: A Legend Reborn remove the long-lasting stench of a terrible game, or prove that Shaq and video games not involving basketballs just don't mix? I was crazy enough to find out. Instead of sticking with the genre that made the Shaq Fu franchise infamous, A Legend Reborn tries to pull off something that was a staple of the 16-bit gaming era, just like fighting games were all those years ago, by presenting a side-scroller brawling beat-em-up. And similar to the classic offerings like Turtles in Time and the Streets of Rage trilogy, A Legend Reborn has a player moving across the screen from left to right and back again, while beating up various enemies until reaching the boss at the end of one of the 6 levels. With the game lasting only 2 to 3 hours, and most of the trophies and achievements being connected to finishing chapters, or defeating a certain amount of enemies under specific circumstances, makes this a relatively easy game to complete in a very short amount of time. During a time when nostalgia is ruling the gaming world, thanks to remasters of older games and even the production of many consoles, it only seems perfect that one of the most infamous games from the 1990s will get a reboot based around a 16-bit generation genre staple. As Shaq, the player moves through 6 very similar stages to destroy invading demonic forces, from tearing up his small Chinese village and eventually the world. Shaq's offense is relatively simplistic, as the protagonist throws punches that, when used in succession, powers up his size 22 kick attack that can knock an opponent flying into the camera a la Turtles in Time. Shaq can punch the ground and send shockwaves throughout an area in a limited fashion. Tapping the bumper buttons will propel Shaq across the screen for a pushback attack that only works on certain enemies, while the triggers can pick up both various strategically placed weapons or knock down stunned adversaries. One of the most surprising aspects of Shaq's offense is his stage-specific transformations. Shaq Diesel, where Shaq becomes an armored, steam-powered puncher, and Shaqtus, Shaq literally turning into a needle-shooting cactus. Shaq can also roll up and down the screen, but the reaction time makes rolling terrible in execution, as well as enemies having homing-like strikes and projectiles. Sadly, there are no leveling up or variations of Shaq's abilities. Taking on enemies ranges from incredibly easy to absurdly difficult due to the copious amount of adversaries that will flood the screen. Enemy hitboxes can be a little difficult when Shaq is surrounded and getting peppered by small punches or the annoying projectile throwers. Unfortunately, enemy variation is lacking, as the base set of people Shaq has to take down in the first level are essentially reskinned and used throughout the other levels, with some of the original variations even appearing in the wrong stages. Boss battles are both unique and underwhelming, as a majority of the ending level moments can easily be defeated no matter the difficulty. The gameplay is so similar to old school brawlers in being repetitive, but it doesn't expand upon the unique stages, enemies, or scenarios that made its predecessors in the genre so great, to cause a player to forget just how similar one stage is compared to the one before it, and the one that will occur afterwards. The story isn't half bad, with Shaq trying to defend his village against otherworldly forces, before having his focus switch to taking down celebrities. In A Legend Reborn, Shaq is an orphan who ended up in China, was made fun of for being taller than everyone else, learned Kung Fu under the guidance of a master teacher and entrepreneur, and found himself as the prototypical chosen one in a video game. The lowbrow humor based on racial stereotypes, outdated celebrity references and parodies, and sheer outrageous moments like Shaq getting saved by a whale that looks a lot like Michael Moore will either turn off some players or get a few chuckles from others. The mostly lacking writing just emphasizes how much of an injustice was done to the voice actors, as everyone involved in the audio department did a marvelous job. A Legend Reborn will take a player at most 3 hours to complete, even on the hardest difficulty. This lack of gameplay time is made even worse thanks to Shaq Fu's price point at $20 to $30, with the cheapest option being a digital purchase that lacks the DLC featuring Barack Obama taking on Kanye West. There's no reason why this game should be priced so expensively, considering it takes little to no time to finish, and there is no multiplayer, online or local, to keep people coming back for more. While there is no doubt this is an overall better experience than the original Shaq Fu, A Legend Reborn is an average game at best, priced way too high, and would benefit from some added stages, enemies, and co-op opportunities. Shaq Fu A Legend Reborn is definitely better than the original, having an understandable though unremarkable system in regards to its core gameplay mechanics. The story is absurd in the best way possible, yet is ultimately forgettable and somewhat cringeworthy thanks to the dated material used to take pot shots at celebrities and the culture celebrity idolization has created. For all its flaws, no multiplayer or online functionality, being incredibly short, having very little enemy variation, hit detection being iffy at times, and an outrageous price tag, A Legend Reborn isn't something you should avoid at all costs. It's the type of game perfectly made for a rental from GameFly or bought for $5. Though A Legend Reborn isn't a great game, it's a lot better than it could have been, and feels like a solid reboot leading to a potential impressive sequel.
You must trust me. Take this. It is a gold bond. A gold bond that has connected our secret order for generations. Gold bond.
Why do you keep saying gold bond?
I get paid every time I say gold bond. Gold bond, gold bond, gold bond.
Yeah, focus.
Right. Shaq, you are our only hope now.